Hello and welcome. My name is Josh Singh. I'm your host of the Racial Healing Podcast. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. I started this podcast because I had to do something. I struggled for a long time to figure out what to do about racism. I've always been an ally. I've done my own work around overcoming my own pain and trauma around racism. And I've always known that that is not really enough. So I started this podcast for people to share their stories, to be heard, and for you, the listener, to witness those stories. And my hope is that we can all heal our hearts and our souls from listening and being part of this podcast together. So thank you for being here. Please consider subscribing, and I hope you enjoyed today's interview. All right, so I'm super excited to have you three men here with me. Mahmoud, Faisal, Elkhatib, Bobby Bakshi, and Rodis. Welcome to the Racial Healing Podcast. This is the first group interview that we're having on the podcast, so I'm super excited. Why don't we start by just having each of you introduce yourselves, tell us your name, your ethnicity, and how you've been handling this pandemic. Faisal, you want to get started?
I will go first. All right. Mahmoud, Faisal, Elkhatib. What were the three questions again?
What's your ethnicity? And how the hell are you dealing with this pandemic?
That's actually a really great question. So I am Palestinian, Muslim, and Syrian. How am I dealing with this pandemic? So my first response the moment these stay-at-home orders started and the shutdowns took place was I went out and all I could think about was the world going to total chaos. I wasn't afraid of the virus. I was afraid of really government or even vigilantes just coming after me and my family. So my first instinct was, even though I hate guns and they scare me, I went out and bought 2 guns, several hundred, almost 1,000 rounds of ammunition. So I had it. I put them in places. And then I went out and stockpiled food and resources, thinking I'd have to shore up and how do I maintain security? I mean, all I could think about was like all those old war movies and Nazi movies where you see the soldiers come storming up the stairs and taking the families and ripping them out. And that's all I could process. Contingency plans. This was my entire first 3 weeks of the shutdown. And then I started doing some work and kind of watching the world and kind of looking at myself and slowly kind of taking a deep breath. And I think probably about week 4 or 5, I started returning some of the things that I had bought. I bought gas cans, like 10-gallon gas cans, so I can strap them to the top of the car. And I mean, it was wild. A lot of that was fear, right? It was fear of that It's knowing that there are people out there, or feeling that people out there that don't accept me for being non-white. So that was kind of my first initiation into this global stuff, the global pandemic, and it had a negative reaction with me and my staff. So I was very unheightened. I was very upset, very angry, reacting very intensely. And as I did some work on myself, I realized that it lured back to some childhood stuff. Yeah, I think I felt that the world was going to betray us. I expected the world to betray us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's a lot. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I didn't mean to bring the energy down.
Hey, jump it right in, baby. Yeah. So, and happy Ramadan to you, Faisal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Bobby, your ethnicity and how are you dealing with this pandemic?
Yeah, hi, I'm Bobby Bakshi, and Indian American, proud Indian American, born in India, lived in the US most of my life. And how am I dealing with the pandemic? It's kind of that chronology. That first few weeks was really surreal because I am very grateful to have a job and being able to work from home. And it was like business as usual. We were just plugging away. I am in HR, so I've been very much part of the response to all of this, and very proud of how my company's handled that. No direct impact on how I've navigated this with my ethnicity, Other than just awareness, we live in Torrance, California, which is a heavily Asian community, and just real sadness about all the hate around Asians. That's probably been the primary thing I've noticed. And also a sense of, I'm really touched by the kindness on apps like Nextdoor, for neighborhoods, and how it's really shifted to care and kindness and compassion and care for the elderly. And so I have a lot of hope. And then I see stuff like Michigan, and it's like, wow, Faisal, I'm fully with you, man. I would do the same thing if that came up. So yeah, also really being very present with my fear. I'm also, very tired and really confused about, I know we need exercise. I need exercise, but why am I so tired? I'm getting lots of sleep. I'm home, but it's the fear. It's the stress and the fear. So that's what I make up. Thanks.
Thanks, Bobby. So Al, I'm going to give you an extra question.
Yeah.
And I think you might know what it is. You got to tell us about these guitars, man.
Well, Al Rodis, Filipino American, born here in the States, children of immigrants. Yeah, so behind me is my passion and my love. Right directly behind me is right here, Fender, Jaguar, Johnny Marr, Signature Edition, Gibson SG, Gibson Les Paul Custom, and Gibson Flying V. And then I've also got Fender Telecaster sitting next to me here as well. So yeah, that's surround myself with stuff that I love. So yeah. As far as the question, wow, I think I echo Bobby's sentiment where I'm grateful, very grateful to have a job and one where I can work from home. There's so much, and I think about that a lot with gratitude that I'm able to continue to earn an income and earn a living, as is my wife. So we haven't been impacted from inability to work. Folks' livelihoods have been taken away overnight. So I feel grateful for that. Being at home and working has been fine, and we've been dealing with it that way. And with the kids, with their e-learning at home and all that good stuff. My wife's a teacher, so she's adapting to that, teaching online as well. But also, Bobby, I echo your sentiment about the way the fear manifests itself in me. The first few weeks, I was bad. It's fine. So it's not a big deal. We'll get through it. And as time has gone on, I feel this tension of not knowing. I know there's nothing I can do about that, so I don't choose to sit in that feeling and let it cripple me. But it's still there. There's still that presence of the tension of not knowing and what's going to come. So does tire me out too, again, from what Bob was saying, I'm getting tons of sleep now, as opposed to having to get up early to commute. I'm sleeping 8 hours a night now, which is like unheard of for me. And it's been great. So why am I tired? Even though I'm getting all the sleep, there's just this tension, this anxiety that is making me tired. And I think and I'm looking for ways to deal with that. And part of it is connection with many folks around my life. And that's been in all facets of my life. And that's been very helpful for me, is still maintaining connection with the ones I love and care about. So yeah, that's what I've got.
Right on. Thanks, Al. So today's program is going to be about internalized oppression. And I asked these men to join me today because I've heard each of them talk about that in their own way and wanted to hear their thoughts and feelings and experiences. So again, I honor you and thank you for coming. I wanted to start off with getting some ideas about what internalized oppression means. So, based on your own experience, your own words, your own ideas, what does that term mean to you, internalized oppression? And anyone can just jump in and, we can have a discussion about that.
Go ahead, Al. Where are you going to go?
Well, I'm struggling with a perfect definition of it, right? And that's so I'm not going to come across that way. But to me, it ties back to self-esteem issues and not viewing myself as good because I am not of characteristics of dominant culture. And that's a message that was taught to me when I was young. So because of that, it negated my worth because I'm not like that dominant culture men.
and as far as from looks or height or body build, facial features, all that kind of stuff. So because I've taken on messages, I don't look like everybody else, then there must be something wrong with me. So I perpetuated that message throughout my entire life until recently when I've done work to shine a light on that and what it means. But, that's the message I've carried with me for most of my life. So that's one piece of there. So I'll leave that where it is because I know I want to come back to speak about that, but I'm definitely curious to hear what the other men have to say about that too.
Yeah. For me, it's those parts of me that I suppress or hide and deny. And for quite a long time, I didn't even realize that, just really stuffing it so deep because the normative stuff is so prevalent that it was just the given, and I never challenged it. It's really very personal, and the way I look at it is my unpacking what it means for me is what it's been, and it really stems on those parts that I've denied. And so it's about the journey for me is about first awareness of what parts I've denied, and then looking at what I choose to do with them and how I step forward to not be a victim about it. But first, really that awareness, because man, there's a lot of schlack, like covering that happened over many years of I'll give a quick example of my grappling with working in corporate America and with white men and, football. I've never cared for American football or any sports for that matter. And, to have to feel like I've got to have that conversation about NFL, I had real shame about that. It was like, yeah, I guess, and I enrolled a buddy once when I was in the Midwest to coach me, train me, and he was very good about it, really brotherly about it. And I still didn't get it and didn't want to get it. And then I let it go, but it's only now that I'm actually proud of saying, I really don't care for sports at all, and it's just not me. So that's just one illustration of the impact of stuffing it in not putting it right up front. That's what comes up, Josh. Yeah.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby. I think internalized depression for me, where I define it as not being good enough, that I can, not only am I not good enough, but I can never be good enough. And that always feeling I have to be more like everybody else and less like me. From changing my name or making my name more Americanized so it's easier for others to pronounce it, to hiding the fact that I'm Muslim or I'm fasting or any of those things that, and it actually came up, funny enough, during Bobby's and Al's check-in, right? When they checked in, I was like, oh my God, I forgot to tell people that I was born in this country. I forgot to tell people that I'm an American. Oh my God, they're going to think So all of these things popped up and these emotions came up because I wanted to make sure, wait, I'm like you. It's okay. I'm safe. So it's this belief that I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. And that the world will see me as someone who isn't safe. That I become dangerous. Just a few of the pieces that come up for me for internalized depression.
Wow, I'm already so touched by what each of you has shared in just these first few minutes. And while each of you was talking, I think especially Bobby, when you were talking about the NFL, I was like, what a white man who loved the NFL have any idea about this? And I'm wondering what you all think about that. Like, have you ever tried to unpack this with white people to sort of explain? I'm seeing some no.
No.
Can you speak
Never.
to that decision, or I don't know if it's a conscious decision or just like knowing that it's a bad idea, but can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, to me, it's really about the club mentality. You call it boys club, but really any club. And when I see people get so like enthused about supporting their team, I'll give you an example. I've got an opportunity on my leadership call next week. We're all working from home and doing these Zoom calls. And every week we have a theme. Like last week was, bring a dog or, your pet to show everybody. Next week is wearing a jersey for the team that you support. And I'm partly fearful, partly like, wow, what an opportunity for me to talk about this. And third part is like, yeah, we've got a Green Bay shirt. I could probably find, throw it on, but that's not really me. So that, is just another example of how if I want to fit in, do I just cave in and wear that Green Bay Packers shirt, or do I not, wear what I want to wear and talk to this about, I'm really not into this. And having the courage to do that, to stand out that way.
And there must be an impact on you if you choose to not be yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And choose to fit in.
If I go and put that shirt on, then I've just said, yeah, okay, you told me to do it, so I did it. But that's not really me, and I don't really have any allegiance. Whereas other people, and by the way, I've had envy about those that are so enthralled by their enthusiasm for a team. And we can talk for ages about that, but it's not me. It's not who I am.
So, Josh, was a question of talking about internalized oppression with white men?
Would you ever do that? Is that safe? Under what?
Yeah, no. For me, it's definitely an adamant no for a few different reasons. And number one, it's my judgment that they wouldn't understand, and in that not understanding, the piece that I have around that is. It would get turned around where it will become like I'm not a racist argument, and it's not about being racist, all right? It's not about defending a white man defending himself that he's not racist. It's that privilege, the unconscious privilege they have to not think or have experienced what I've experienced. So my judgment is they wouldn't understand. A, they can never understand because they haven't gone through it. And B, it would turn into a discussion of, well, geez, I'm not racist, so I don't understand. And I just don't want to get into that discussion. I choose not to. So that's why I seek solace in men that look like me who have gone through this experience, who have seen it firsthand, to be able to discuss and speak about it. I would never talk to at least anybody who wasn't curious and that I trusted about that. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, for me, I would echo obviously a lot what Al and Bobby said. Talking about internalized oppression, it would for me, the turnaround is they would make me wrong, right?
Yep.
No, you're just imagining things, and so that would be gaslit into believing that it's all about me, and no, that's not the way the world is, and I'm such a pessimist, and why are you so this and so that? Can't you, like, where are the rose-colored, bushes and all that other stuff?
Yep.
And with regards to the football piece, that's a huge one for me. Like football or baseball, any one of the sports. I mean, I remember sitting, and it's not just white men, right? White NFL men. I mean, I've had a situation with black men, and you'd sit. I mean, I remember going to dinner with someone, and we're waiting for another buddy of ours, and I was just trying to have a conversation about anything, and it was nothing. And then my buddy shows up, and they're like, "Oh my God, you see what the Lakers did?" And there was like a 45-minute intense debate over, I have no idea what. I just sat there and I was like, I just sat here for an hour trying to talk to you about the world, and that went nowhere. And for me, like Bobby was talking about their passion for these sports and the envy for those teams and everything else. I mean, I have a passion for the Palestinian cause. I have a passion for the Syrian cause. I have a passion for certain world events and political positions. And I feel like by having that passion in those areas, instead of making me a patriot like it would if I loved the Bulls or the Lakers or somebody, it makes me a traitor, right? Because my passion is outside of this country. And it's like, wait a minute, I can still love both. I can still be this and that. So there's that fear of talking about that. And then it's okay to be passionate for a team, but it can be couched the wrong way for being passionate for something else, right? A zealot, for example. Mm-hmm. I would not have that conversation. And then the boy club thing, right? Or being part of the club. Then they'll be like, "Oh, dude, I totally respect the fact that you like sports." So, anyways, right? And now we're going to respect you while you stand over there in the corner by yourself, and we're not going to include you because clearly we don't want to offend you by talking about sports around you. Well, I'm just going to wear my jersey because I learn a few things about sports. Just say enough for them to take over the conversation and talk about whatever they want, because that's just a lot easier.
Well, thank you guys for sharing. And, what one thing that really came across to me is, being screwed if you don't try hard enough to fit in, because then you're not in, you're out, and screwing yourself over if you choose to fit in. And then also, how no fucking way are you guys going to talk about this with somebody who's likely to just turn it around on you? And the courage it takes to talk about this, even in a setting like this, where there's no one here like that. I do have a white parent, so maybe there's a little bit of that. But still, white people are going to hear this. And so, there's a risk. You don't have to deal with their reactions in real time, but there's a risk there. So, oh my God, absolutely. Bobby and Al have changed positions on my screen.
Did that happen because I touched the stop video for a moment?
Oh my God, this is chaos. Oh my God. Some people say all Asian people look the same, but I think that our audience here is going to be all right with the three of you.
I want to mix things up, right?
That's right. So I want to follow up on some things that each of you said. And I want to ask you, you mentioned your height. Can you speak to that a little bit, and how that plays a role in talking about?
Sure. Well, yeah. I was thinking about this before today, just thinking back to some moments throughout my life that have informed the way I've carried this message with me. And so when I was young, I got made fun of a lot for not looking like everybody else. So I grew up in a predominantly white, upper middle class suburb of Chicago. There were some Asians, there's some Indian kids, but mostly white kids. And I got made fun of a lot for the way my nose looked. Right, I didn't have an angular nose. My lips were larger than the other kids. I was shorter than the other kids, and I was called various Asian slurs that didn't apply to Filipinos. So when I tried to defend myself and say, I'm not Japanese or Chinese, and then they'd ask what I was, and I said Filipino, and then I was met with a blank stare, like, what the hell is that? Right? So I took on the message that I didn't exist or didn't matter or didn't, because they hadn't heard of my home country, that I didn't exist. So I taking that message on, as well as my father telling me, look, you're not white and you're going to have a hard time in life because you're not white. So, and he sat me down and had that conversation multiple times throughout my childhood. And then my first job in high school, I was 15, and I worked from 15 all the way from when I went to college. And my bosses at that after-school job had sat me down a couple of times and said, look, you're not white, and you're going to have a hard time in life because you're not white. So I took all those messages on, and my dad also told me, don't fight back, don't cause waves, don't cause a stir, just don't worry about it, you know? So then that made it okay for me to take those messages on like it was okay, like it was right, like they were right, you know what I mean? So, so that informed me early on. And then going through life, you know, I had already thought that I was less than because I don't look like everybody else. And it's funny, you know, I did think of the story that, you know, when you talk about height and physical characteristics, that it kind of keys off the story. I had a paper out when I was 13 for a couple of years. And so, you know, I'd be out delivering papers in the morning. And when the sun's rising and it's shining down, I could see my shadow in the street, right, as I'm walking down the street. And I would look at my face, right? And I see it because I got made fun of for my cheeks too, right? And I look at my face, and I'd see the shadow of my face, like this big round face, you know? And I thought, man, I'd suck my cheek in, you know? I thought, why can't my cheek look more chiseled? Why couldn't it be more Anglo, you know? And I thought that, right? Those were real thoughts that I had going through my head. Like I wanted to be different. I wanted to look like everybody else that was dominant culture, you know? So I took those messages on of my nose, of my cheeks, of my height. And again, that stayed with me my entire life because also my father told me that just don't cause waves, don't fight back, don't cause a stir, you know, just, you know, let it go. So like I said, then it made it okay. That's the message I took out. And then as time had gone on, you know, so that's the stuff I'd taken on as a kid. And then throughout my life, especially in the workplace, I'm going to call it like casual racism, right? Where there's the way I've experienced it is, you know, just the same Asian jokes. And it's okay because I'm not African American, so it's not offensive to joke about my ethnicity like it is with other ethnicities. So I got that kind of stuff all the time, you know. And you know, my internalized depression would laugh it off, just like you know, it wasn't a big deal, but it is a big deal, and I was suppressing it, similar to what Bobby was saying, suppressing those feelings. So you know, Asian women fetishes, right? White men would try to bond with me on that shit. Like I could identify with that. You know, it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like that's my mom or my sister or my daughter when you're talking to me about that stuff. So, but again, you know, my internalized depression took that in and didn't allow me to speak up for myself because, you know what, they're just joking around. It's not a big deal. So that's what the IO does. It flips that perspective to make it okay, for me to justify that those things that are coming in, either from externals or the way I'm thinking about not being myself and wanting to look like a dominant culture man, the IO for me makes it okay to take those messages on when it's not okay. And I've dealt with all that and held it in my entire life and it's come out sideways in various parts of my life as well. You know, angrily or whatever. But I never knew how it was, right? I never knew until I started working on myself and understanding better and tracing it back and trying to figure out what that was. So yeah, so that, you know, when you talk about the height, to me, that works more into physical characteristics of not looking like dominant culture men. And yeah. Thanks for listening. It was a really big piece for me to get out. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Al. I could feel all the feels hearing your sadness, the fucking rage, all of that, the shame. So thank you for
shame. Lots of shame. Yeah, man. Thank you for that. Lots of shame too. Absolutely.
So Faisal, when you were sharing about internalized depression and what it means for you, you mentioned your name, and I've heard you talk about that before. And yeah, I want to just invite you to share about saying your name in the journey you've been on with that.
That's been a huge thing for me my whole life. So getting, so growing up as a kid, I grew up in pretty much a white neighborhood in Barrington, Illinois. And then I went to private school, which was also predominantly white teachers, everybody was white. And, it was like, well, what's your name? What? And it was like, just call me Faisal, right? So Faisal was easy and kind of like basil, right? And so that was my name. And then the worst was when the Disney movie, American Tail or whatever it is with a little Fievel.
Yep.
Right. Then it became, oh, you're like Fievel, right? Fievel, right? And just became different pronunciations. And it was very hard. So my whole life, I really hid my first name, Mahmoud, which is, a very generational name for my family. My grandfather, my great-great-grandfather passed down. It was just, and I hid that. And then when I went through my weekend, right, my initiation NWTA, MKP, that was the first time it was okay. I felt that it was okay for me to reclaim my name and my heritage, Mahmoud Faisal Elkhatib, and just take the power that exists with my name and say it in mixed company. And it's kind of funny because I remember being in this, it was a conference of black realtists or real estate sales brokers. And we're in this room of 50 people and they all know me as Faisal, right? So I even corrected how to pronounce my name if they're going to American. It's Faisal, right? So Faisal. And something, they did a blessing or prayer on Jesus, our Lord Savior, blah, 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 right? And as a Muslim, I was like, what? So I remember saying my name, Mahmoud Faisal Elkhatib, and then everybody in the room was just dead silent. They didn't know what to do with what I had just, and my friends were and they're oh, just Faisal, right? He knows we're here. It was almost, I needed all my friends in the group to say it's okay that he's here with us. And there's a lot of layers there between the Arabs and the black community. But I think in general, just the ability to say my name in front of a judge, right? So stepping up and just saying my name fully what it is, and not being afraid of it. And that's the shame of taking pride in the power of my name is what I've learned to do now. But even now, as I say that, it's really hard. It's still hard, right? So, I don't know. You try to explain it to someone that to live 30 years or 40 years of your time without actually properly pronouncing your name, right? And just a little funny anecdote. My daughter's name is Ayla, right? And so we've taught her to be militant about it. So if anybody says her name Ayla, she's no, it's Ayla. And so she corrects even my own, my parents, right? So my daughter's 4 now, but a year ago, my dad looks at me and he goes, you call yourself Faisal, but your name is really Faisal. And I'm like, what?
What you told me?
What are you talking about? So that was a little funny anecdote. And then my mom looked at me and she goes, I call you Faisal and you call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. And I was like, there we go. What's the story that we tell ourselves?
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have stories I could tell about my own name. People who know my first name first think I'm one thing. People who hear my last name first think I'm something else. When they hear it together, it's people's minds are blown. How could you exist? Yeah, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, Josh, I'd like to jump in with the name.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Since we're all Mankind Project men, on a weekend when us leaders get feedback, a full leader made this comment. It wasn't curiosity. It was what's up with Bobby? I mean, the name, right? It's like it feels like calling a IT help desk in Bangalore, India, and getting a guy, who goes, "Hello, I'm David. How are you?" And I got so pissed. I just absolutely had to contain myself because, there's a format to those things. I said, I've got to say something and I'll wait till the end. And so I did. And this is what I said to him. I said, you could have got curious. You could have asked me about my name. So my name is Sudhir Bobby Bakshi. You call my mom in India and you say Sudhir and she'll go, who? Nobody in my family has ever called me that name. So, now back to IO, I've had times when I've looked at that and said, am I in denial? Is Bobby like Faisal for Faisal? Like it's the easy name for everybody. And so is that why I'm using it? And no, because why Bobby is so precious to me is a really little silly story. I was a toddler and my sister was 5. And there was a pet dog, there was a dog that she was really friendly with in the neighborhood, and the name of the dog was Bobby. So I'm named after a dog, and I'm really proud of it. So there you go. I mean, the reason that story, I think, is really illustrative of the power of IO is I could easily go down the path of saying, oh, no, I should be called Sudhir. Right? And start to identify that way to express my Indianism. And I don't need to do that. I'm just as Indian and I'm just as Indian American as I am with Bobby Bakshi. So
thank you, Bobby. Yeah. I appreciate that. And
that's really powerful. If I can.
Go ahead. Yeah, of course.
So part of the things on the internalized depression piece that I have learned in talking to different people about it is there is a part of insecurity that many men have anyways, just from growing up, right? So that little piece that gets removed from inside of us, and then it gets replaced with you're not good enough or I'm not good enough. And then what happens, the purpose of internalized depression is that the oppressor no longer has to tell me I'm not good enough. I now do the job of the oppressor to myself over and over again in order to maintain my position of inferiority in the world. So the powerful piece that brought that up was Bobby looking at that and going, am I internally oppressed? Am I using Bobby to internally oppress myself? But his own work internally, as I judge, is that he was able to deal with that insecurity that exists in most, if not all people, right? And said, no, I can stand in my own power as an Indian American by being named Bobby. Being named Bobby doesn't make me less than. But if Bobby was hiding behind the word Bobby and not conscious of it, right, that's where the internalized depression piece is. So it's such a weird dynamic and paradigm to shift between. It's more about, I think, a consciousness and awareness of it. So blessings to you, Bobby, on that, because I know I've had that conversation with you too.
No, thank you. And really for the audience, if you're sitting on that is only the answer, so only I knew what was right for me, but it took me time. So give yourself time, to really unpack that.
Yeah. So I wanted to follow up on something else you said earlier too, that's connected here, of the unpacking. You said there's a whole lot of cover. It took a while for you to become aware of this stuff, Bobby. You're talking about your workplace. How did that process happen for you? Can you share maybe a piece about the uncovering?
Yeah, another quick story. So early, I was in my 20s working in a major corporation, and I was invited to be in a picture of me with others in the annual report. And something in me knew right away. I was junior, I wasn't like a senior guy or something, that it's about color. But the other side of it was pride. It's like, wow, yeah, I get to be, seen by everybody. So that's the version of unpacking. That young on, when I didn't know about IO, I just gravitated to the pride. I didn't speak up about it. I didn't get angry about it. And even though I knew that that's what's happening, I took the privileged side of it rather than, being the target. And yeah, so I think what's come for me over the years is just more discernment in catching things in the moment. I do want to go back, the thing about friends and white folks getting us or not. I'm going to get a little political here. 4 years ago, when Trump was coming up, I had to say goodbye to a friend, a really good friend. And the short version of that story is that I was really hurt that he didn't get why I find him so offensive. Right? And that friend who knew me so well should know that, what qualities about this man make him absolutely offensive to me. Am I right in that assumption that he should know? I mean, we talked about it, I laid it out, but I still didn't feel like he got it. And so I had to say goodbye to that, relationship because, I don't have tolerance for that.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to unfriend this man too. I don't know him yet, but I'd like to also put him on my list of not friends. Thank you for that piece, Bobby. So clearly, the three of you have done a lot of work. I don't know a lot of people who can, so cogently and fluidly and honestly share about this kind of stuff. So I'm wondering, how did that happen? Can you share a little bit about the work you've done to heal from these painful experiences and internalized depression?
I can start. So I would say it's been about 5 years now. I've been in talk therapy for 5 years, and through that, I discovered Mankind Project, and going through the MWTA and then successively sitting in group with men once a week, that allowed me to be able to articulate initially feelings of anger and shame and frustration, which then, led to realizations. So that outlet for me to be able to talk about what's going on in my life, as well as where I'm at today, has helped me gain this gift of awareness. And that awareness then leads to connecting the dots for me. And then when I connect the dots, I get a better understanding of where I've been and, where I've been in my journey. And so it's that repeated, call it repeated articulation of that through the outlet that I get with sitting in a group every week to be able to talk about these things. But on the flip side of that, I also want to have to do that. I could choose to sit and not do anything about it, but the curiosity that I have about myself and my emotional well-being and understanding how my emotional well-being impacts myself and those around me, that's been the driver to get me to dig deeper into, man, why am I so angry about this thing? And it's not about that thing. There's something underneath that, right? And that's the hard work that it takes to dig in, to understand that surface level anger, frustration, shame. There's something underneath that. And to dig in with that has been a gift for me. And the community has been a gift for me to be able to dig in and work on it. And, the internalized depression piece is but one of the many realizations I've made throughout the course of my time within Mankind Project, as well as my time in talk therapy once a week. So, that for me has been the journey that I've been on and continue to be on. So yeah, that's how I've gotten the ability to, be articulate with that stuff, which I wasn't 5 years ago. I was just fucking pissed. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was sad. But what is, I got tired of feeling that way all the time. So I had to understand what that was all about. And the journey continues. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Al. Want to share?
Yeah, sure. I'll go. So what's coming up for me is just deep gratitude for the Mankind Project and what it's enabled for me to look at my own work. And it's really like a two-sided thing. For those who don't know that world, it is known to be very white-centric and very open to all men. So they're really keen. We are really keen to have more men of color. And so I think the work I've done for myself through that, I don't know of another place where I could do the deep layers of work I've done than that environment, because in a funny way, despite everything about not having other men of color around, I feel safe for the most part. There are times I don't, but for the most part, once I figure that out with a group of men, I can open up. And yeah, I'll stop there for now. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. How about you, Faisal?
I think Al eloquently just said everything I wanted to say. But yeah, it's one part of a big picture, tired of being angry. It also, the term sideways is a huge term that kind of describes what would happen. So I'll be bubbling and cooking over here, right? And I'm containing that and kind of suppressing it. And then something happens over here and it just pops out sideways. And now I'm reacting. I use this a lot with my team and my staff, but like this big of a situation and I'm reacting at this level, right? So all of this extra had nothing to do with the circumstance. And not saying that all of this is IO, but it all feeds in the same piece, right? So, reading an article online or seeing some post on Facebook about, like seeing what's happening in Michigan with these guys with full assault rifles walking to the state capitol, or the guys who took over the federal facility in Oregon. I don't know if you remember that, like 5 or 6 years ago. And all I could be thinking about was, if any of those guys was a Muslim, oh my God, they'd have drone strike that building. So then now I talk about that, and I've always kind of been vocal about it, but I've been vocal angry. And I'm still angry. And then or I may not say anything about it, and it comes out and totally something unrelated. So unpacking that and kind of dealing with that was where I wanted to stop being so angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Faisal, you know what comes up, but I love your little diagram there. Is that
PowerPoint?
Yeah, good PowerPoint. Each of us are meaning-making machines, right? There's that saying, I don't know from where, that the way I take something in, when you say something or something happens, I make up a meaning that's unique to me. I'm a meaning-making machine in the head, and there are times when it's okay to let it go, when I've made up a meaning and not expressed how it landed on me, versus when it's really important for me to express that. And that's when I fall into the same trap you're describing, of that suppressing is what then has it blow up sideways. Mm-hmm. And so, if there's something I've learned, is to speak up sooner. That's where I'm going, is, that to put it out there and just really be okay with getting messy, knowing that others won't get it, but at least expressing myself as authentically as I can. Yeah.
And I found, in terms of getting messy, it's really, for me, I don't feel safe sharing it among the world. So I can get messy and deal with it in NKP circles, for example. I feel like those are safe spaces to do so. And kind of going back to one of your first questions, Josh, about talking to white men about this, or men who are not like me, I'm finding, and it's a very huge emotional toll on me personally to do so, but I find it's almost become my mission and moral imperative to speak to men who are white or not like me, to talk about this piece, to talk about privilege, to help them at least to glean some understanding. Because if they take a nugget, what I keep telling everybody is they can go into rooms that I can't go into. They can go speak to men, and they may not say anything, but they may be like this one off-color joke about, Muslim terrorists. And the guy goes, you know what, man, I know a Muslim. They're not all terrorists, and I find that offensive, right? Or even go more dramatic. When I was in Philly, is if I'm having a conversation with a Jewish American or a Jewish man to talk about what's going on to the Palestinians, right? They may not agree with me, but they may say something to someone who says something to someone that may hesitate from pushing the button to kill more, right? So that's kind of, I don't know how I went off that tangent, but the point is, talking to men who are white is extremely painful, but doing so in the MKP world, I find that is safer.
So is that the concept of an ally? Is that what I'm hearing? Because that's the way I'm interpreting it. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Can you talk a little bit about that, Al? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, the thing with that really hit me because I never understood what an ally was, and I'm slowly learning what that means. And just to just top of mind articulate, it's for any historically oppressed group, be it ethnicity or LGBTQ, etc. There can be allies of folks outside of that group to do the things you're saying, Faisal, of the education of, hey, this is what we're about. And those messages may seep in and may cause that ally to speak up somewhere else in their world. But I've had some of those conversations within the realm of Mankind Project. I haven't really had those conversations outside of that because I think my judgment anyway is that there's confusion on what an ally means. And I'm still trying to understand what that means, right? And there was a really great moment when I was staffing Los Angeles, and there was some work that I'd done with a fellow staff man, which was really powerful about, he made, Asian slur remark, and I didn't say shit. I didn't say anything. And that looking back in the moment was my IO permitted that to be okay. And then I was able to do some work around that. Faisal, you were there. Other men were there to support me. And then there was also a teaching piece for that dominant culture man to understand what it was like to be an ally, right? And when we were trying to define that, what an ally means to one another, he put statements out there like, "Hey, I got your back," and all this other stuff. And I'm like, and I understand. Like he said something to the effect of, "I understand." And I said, "Fuck you! You do not understand. You absolutely do not fucking understand." So then some more went on, and then I learned that I can define what it means to be an ally, for somebody to be an ally for me. And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize I could set those terms, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I said was, look, I'm not looking for you to fix anything. I'm not looking for you to fix me or fix, 40 years of my life and carrying around all this burden and bullshit. Just be aware. Just be aware. Just have awareness. And Faisal, I judge that's the same sentiment you were getting at when you talked to dominant culture men about that. It's just have some awareness around what we're about, So, but that moment there, I'm glad you told that story, because it allowed me to recall back and I get to judge what an ally is for me, and that's powerful, man. So thanks for talking about that, man.
So
Sorry to interrupt you there, but I got one more question or one more topic for us. I know we could go on for a long time, but the last thing I want to invite you men to talk about is the shared project that we're doing together. So in addition to this podcast, we're working, there's been a lot of references to the Mankind Project. Also, some of you have used the acronym NWTA. For those who don't know, it's the New Warrior Training Adventure, which is the signature program of the Mankind Project. But the four of us are, with a bunch of other men, are working on a project together. Would one of you like to share about what that is and how that fits in with what we've been talking about today?
Well, on this one, Josh, I say you kick us off.
Yeah, you do it, man.
Go for it.
You are the exalted leader on that project.
Oh my! I don't think that's my official title, but I'll speak. Yes, thank you. So, so Al, Bobby, and Faisal and I are working on a project together called the Pan Asian and Middle Eastern New Warrior Training Adventure. So this is a weekend experience for men who have heritage from Asia or anywhere in the Middle East. And there's a lot of goals we have, or I have, and I think some of those are shared. A lot of those are shared. One is, first of all, for men to be in a setting that is safe. And what that means is where there's some shared understanding, there's some shared experiences. When somebody says, shares a story that any of these three men have shared, the rest of the men there say, yes, I understand. That makes sense to me. There's not a need to explain everything and go through it all. In any case, I could go on here. One of the things that we're going to do is create opportunities that we are doing for men to work on their internalized oppression. Growing up a person, regardless of where you are in the world, but growing up as a person who's not part of the dominant culture, as Bobby, Al, and Faisal have shared, a lot of self-loathing, a lot of anger, rage, sadness, shame, fear. And we are creating a space for men to work through that. And the four of us are going to be there facilitating that work. So I'm super excited about it. I'm going to pause there and see if any of you guys want to add anything about the project, what it means to you, or some of your thoughts or feelings about it.
I'll add that one of the ways we're building that community is a circle of men gathering on Zoom, which, Josh, you've done such a great job in building that community. I mean, we've gone from 13 men the first time to 32 or more last month. The one thing I want to share is that what came up that first time was all 13 men in their own version of it shared something that really struck me and holds me as the primary reason why we need this particular type of Mankind Project community. We all felt like we don't belong anywhere. I'll share my example. So being Indian American, when I go visit my mom and family in India, I absolutely belong with my family, but I don't belong in the overall community as an Indian. I'm seen as a foreigner. And in America, I'm not the white guy. So that's just one small example. But and again, I think that's the ultimate sort of expression of IO, is until we came together and saw, oh my gosh, I've never seen so many men of color together in one place. It didn't even maybe occur to some of us that how lonely it is to be a man of color in America when you're not either white or black, right? Those get talked about a lot, but all the different versions of Asian and Middle Eastern and Faisal, the complexity of stereotypes put on Muslims. There's so much work to be done.
Yeah. So well put, Bobby. And that's an issue that I've struggled with my entire life, is that issue of identity. The story I tell myself is I've grown up identity-less. where I'm not born and raised in the Philippines, so I'm not Filipino. And I went back, or I went there for the first time in 2015, and I'm definitely not Filipino. Growing up and going to my parents' friends' parties, I couldn't speak the language, so I couldn't identify with what was going on at the cultural level that they had. And then, to your point, I'm not white either. So I'm not quote unquote American enough for America, So that has caused so many issues with me over the course of my life with respect to identity and who I am and where I fit in and all that stuff. And it's still with me today. It still is. And thanks for articulating that. I think that's a really huge piece of what this work is. So thank you.
Yeah, so I want to thank you three beautiful men for coming on today. It was an absolute pleasure and joy spending this time with you, even though I can't give you a hug in person. Just sending you love from my heart through Zoom here. And just want to honor you for all the work you've done on yourselves. And really, each of you is such a beacon of light, paving the way forward. I really, really believe that. Really, truly believe that. So I honor you. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks for inviting us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.